The best time to be alive. Was it really? People love to say, I was born in the wrong century. Really? Because that wrong century usually has no antibiotics, no air conditioning. And the strongest tool in the dentist's hands is confidence. Living in the modern world sometimes feels truly strange. I press a button, and someone I have never met delivers food straight to my door. The hardest thing left for me to do is decide what to watch while I eat. By the time I finally choose something, the food is cold, and I end up giving the courier a hard time. We have clean water, devices that allow us to communicate instantly, and maps that calmly create a new route even after we take the wrong turn 3 times. Still, some periods in history look almost perfect from a distance. Magnificent cities, beautiful works of art, great discoveries, more gold than anyone knew what to do with. You cannot help but wonder, could I have lived there? Well, let's find out. We are going to visit some of the periods believed to have been the best times to be alive. But I have one condition. The time machine must have a return ticket, because every golden age comes with terms and conditions, and history loves writing them in tiny letters. Yes, our first stop is Athens in the 5th century BC. If you were a free adult male citizen of Athens, this could have been a very exciting place to live. You could vote directly on important decisions, participate in public debates, watch new plays, and listen to some of the greatest thinkers in history. Just imagine. You leave home to buy some olives. On the way, you run into Socrates and suddenly find yourself questioning the meaning of reality for 3 hours. By the time you return home, you have started questioning your entire life. You come back without the olives but with a serious identity crisis. The city was filled with theater, architecture, poetry, philosophy, and political debate. Meals included bread, cheese, fruit, olives, fish, and watered wine. To be honest, that menu would probably become a very expensive lunch today and completely empty our wallets. But now we come to the terms written in tiny letters. Athenian democracy did not include everyone. Women, enslaved people, and foreigners living in the city had little or no political power. That meant a large part of the population could not benefit from the freedoms for which Athens became famous. The 5th century also brought wars and a deadly plague, so this was not a peaceful summer camp where everyone sat around discussing philosophy all day. Sometimes Sparta interrupted the conversation. Would I visit Athens? Absolutely. Would I move there permanently? First, I would ask who actually counted as a citizen. Then I would quietly take one step back toward the time machine. Actually, I would run. Our next stop is the Roman Empire during the Pax Romani. Beginning under Emperor Augustus, this period is known as a long era of relative peace. Rome had powerful armies, busy ports, enormous trade networks, and roads connecting distant parts of the empire. Goods could travel from Spain all the way to Syria. Cities had public baths, fountains, theaters, markets, libraries, and impressive water systems. Rome almost looked as if it had come from the future. Of course, this was an ancient version of the future where every journey was also a test of your spine's endurance. Roman roads were impressive, but their vehicles did not have modern suspension. After a long journey, it might not be only you who needed to visit the baths. Every bone in your body might need one too. Public baths were an important part of social life. People went there to wash, exercise, relax, and hear the latest gossip from around the city. In short, it was a social media platform with more water and fewer privacy settings. But the Roman world was deeply unequal. Much of its wealth depended on conquest and slavery. Enslaved people had almost no protection, and many were forced to perform extremely difficult labor. The kind of life you had also depended entirely on how much money you possessed. While wealthy Romans lived in comfortable homes, poor families stayed in crowded apartment buildings. Fires, disease, and poor sanitation were always serious threats to their lives. Roman engineering was impressive. The Roman air, not so impressive. The smells of animals, waste, smoke, and food that had been sitting in the sun for far too long all mixed together in the streets. Would I visit Rome? Yes, with strong sandals and an even stronger nose. Would I stay there? Let's put it this way, ancient Roman statues never mention the smell of the city, and I value my life. Now let's make our way to Renaissance Italy. Cities such as Florence, Venice, and Rome have become centers of art, trade, banking, science, and architecture. Wealthy families financially supported artists and thinkers so they could create extraordinary works. Leonardo da Vinci was interested in almost everything, from painting to human anatomy. Michelangelo turned blocks of stone into people who looked more alive than most of us do before our morning coffee. Raphael created magnificent paintings, while improvements in printing helped new ideas spread across Europe. If you were talented, curious, and lucky enough to find a wealthy person willing to invest in your work, this could have been a wonderful time for you. After the Black Death greatly reduced Europe's population, some of the surviving workers were able to demand higher wages. Because fewer people were available to work, labor had become more valuable. Life genuinely improved for some people. But the Renaissance was not one enormous art festival where everyone received free paint. Most people still worked under extremely difficult conditions, while poverty, disease, political violence, and social inequality remained widespread. Women had limited freedom, and political power was mostly held by wealthy men. If you were a talented male artist with a powerful supporter, this period could have been your golden age. If you were an ordinary worker, you might have spent the entire day carrying marble so someone else could become an immortal artist. Now let's get to the real question. I would definitely visit Renaissance Florence. I would watch the artists work, eat something delicious, and leave before anyone asked me to help carry a statue. Now we are traveling to a much older period, ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt existed for thousands of years, so it is impossible to describe all of it as one single golden age. However, during different periods, Egyptian society was far ahead of many other civilizations. The Egyptians developed writing, materials, ink, medical treatments, surgical methods, cosmetics, toothpaste-like mixtures, breath fresheners, and board games. Most importantly, they had cats. They treated cats as if the animals had personally written the laws of the country. To be honest, modern cats still seem to believe that women in ancient Egypt could own property, inherit wealth, enter into legal agreements, and, in some cases, end their marriages, compared with women in many later societies. These were significant rights. However, that did not mean everyone was equal. Egypt had a strict social order. Pharaohs and government officials held enormous power, while farmers and laborers carried much of the burden. Some people, especially prisoners captured during wars, were also enslaved. Daily life was filled with heavy taxes, dangerous work, disease, painful dental problems, and the possibility of a poor harvest. The Egyptians believed that the afterlife continued many parts of normal life. For this reason, they placed food, furniture, tools, and personal belongings inside tombs. They planned their journey into the afterlife far more carefully than I plan my weekend trips. Would I visit ancient Egypt? Actually, yes. But I would bring plenty of water, show respect to every cat I encountered, give them lots of kisses and cuddles, and touch absolutely nothing inside the tombs. Our next stop is the Mali Empire in West Africa. During the 13th and 14th centuries, Mali became one of the richest empires in the world. It controlled important trade routes that carried gold, salt, and other valuable goods across the Sahara. Its most famous ruler was Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa was so wealthy that stories about his fortune still sound fictional today. During his pilgrimage to Mecca, he reportedly spent and distributed so much gold that he even affected gold prices in Cairo. That is an entirely different level of spending. Meanwhile, I can barely afford to go out once a week. Under Mali's rule, Timbuktu became an important center of trade, religion, books, and education. Scholars there studied subjects such as law, mathematics, language, and astronomy. Manuscripts were extremely valuable. If you love books, Timbuktu was the kind of place where you could walk into a shop saying, "I'll only look around for 5 minutes," and then completely lose yourself among the books. However, Mali's wealth was not distributed equally. The empire had a strict social order, and slavery was part of its economy. Traveling through the desert was also extremely slow and dangerous. After Mansa Musa's reign, political rivalries and outside pressures gradually weakened the empire. So, What would I do? I would visit Timbuktu for its libraries and scholars. I would simply try to avoid traveling during the part of the day known as the time when everything is unbearably hot. Now we are leaving the great cities behind and heading into the Pacific Ocean. Centuries before famous European explorers reached the Pacific, Polynesian navigators were already making extraordinary journeys across it. They traveled in large sailing canoes and reached islands separated by thousands of kilometers of open ocean. They did all of this without satellites, digital maps, or a little blue dot showing them where they were. They could read the stars, waves, wind, clouds, birds, and even changes in the color of the water. There have been times when I tried to reach an unfamiliar place and still went the wrong way, even after asking everyone around me for directions. I am a disgrace. Anyway, these navigators crossed the world's largest ocean by using details that most of us would never even notice. Over many generations, Polynesian communities settled in places such as Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and Aotearoa, which is now known as New Zealand. They carried useful plants, food, tools, and animals with them, building new homes far from the lands they had left behind. These journeys required courage, skill, teamwork, and extraordinary knowledge of nature. They were also extremely dangerous. Storms, hunger, water shortages, or a small navigation mistake could turn the entire journey into a disaster. The communities living on these islands later faced conflicts, resource shortages, and environmental pressures. There was probably no single reason why long-distance exploration slowed down. As people settled on the islands, their needs and social conditions changed. Would I join one of these journeys? I would like to say yes, but in reality, I would first ask where the life jackets were and then become the most useless person in the canoe. Now, together, we are climbing high into the Andes and entering the Inca Empire. The Inca Empire reached the height of its power during the 15th and early 16th centuries. Its capital, Cusco, is traditionally said to have been designed in the shape of a puma. That alone was already a pretty strong beginning. An ordinary city says, "We built a city." Cusco says, "We built a giant mountain cat." The Incas constructed a vast network of roads, mountain paths, suspension bridges, agricultural terraces, irrigation channels, and storage buildings. Fast runners carried messages to different parts of the empire. They did not need delivery vehicles because these people apparently had better stamina than an entire modern gym. The government collected goods from communities and required them to work for certain periods. In return, it stored food and redistributed it, especially during difficult times. The Incas also used knotted cords known as quipu to record information. Archaeological evidence shows that some Inca doctors performed skull surgery and that a surprising number of patients survived. However, an organized system does not necessarily mean that its people are free. The compulsory labor system known as MITA could require adult men to work on roads, farms, mines, or construction projects. The empire expanded through conquest, relocated some communities to other regions, and created a strict social order. Human sacrifice was also known to take place during certain religious ceremonies. So yes, the roads were quite good. The employment contract was not nearly as exciting. I would visit Cusco, but the high altitude would probably decide whether I stayed there or not. Our final stop is the Song Dynasty, which ruled China from 960 to 1279. Song cities such as Kaifeng and Hangzhou were enormous, lively, wealthy, and surprisingly modern. Printing techniques improved, movable type began to be used, paper money entered circulation, knowledge of the compass developed, while gunpowder technology continued to advance. Agricultural innovations increased food production. Canals allowed goods to be transported quickly between regions. The cities had restaurants, tea houses, shops, entertainment districts, book markets, and lively nightlife. You could eat out, buy a printed book, drink tea, and complain about how quickly your money disappeared. Finally, a historical lifestyle I can understand. The growing urban middle class benefited from products and services that were rare in other parts of the world. Some cities even had organized fire brigades and printed advertisements. If you found yourself in Song era China, city life might feel surprisingly familiar for a while. However, the dynasty's entire history was not peaceful. It faced attacks from neighboring states and serious military pressure. Taxes and government demands could be heavy. While life remained difficult for poor farmers, women also faced increasing restrictions. The painful practice of foot binding became widespread among certain parts of society. Advanced technology did not automatically bring equal rights or modern healthcare. Still, if I had to choose a historical city for comfort and entertainment, Song-era Hangzhou would be a serious candidate. I would simply keep my return ticket in a very safe pocket. So, what truly was the best time to be alive? There is a hidden problem inside that question. The answer depends on who you were. A period that was a golden age for a ruler could be terrible for a farmer. A time that was wonderful for a wealthy scholar could be extremely dangerous for a woman, an enslaved person, a foreigner, or anyone born into the wrong social class. History usually shows us the palace, not the person who cleaned it. It shows us the beautiful statue, not the worker who carried the stone. It shows us the Roman road. But it does not always show us the exhausted people who built it. That does not make the achievements of the past any less impressive. These civilizations developed ideas, works of art, tools, and systems that still shape our lives today. It simply means that a perfect century has never existed. Our own age has many problems too. We have advanced technology, but we also use it to argue with strangers and watch 15 videos in a row before finally deciding to sleep. To be honest, if a time machine appeared in front of me, I would want to visit every one of these places. I would listen to debates in Athens, walk through the streets of Rome, watch the artists of Florence, meet the cats of Egypt, explore the libraries of Timbuktu across the Andes, and drink tea in Song-era China. Then I would return home before anyone suggested performing surgery without anesthesia. Maybe the best time to be alive is not one particular century. Maybe the best time is any period in which knowledge, safety, health, and freedom are available to more people than they were in the past. We are not completely there yet, but at least we have the chance to keep moving in that direction. If someone still says they were born in the wrong century, ask them one simple question: are you sure? Or do you just like the clothes?